What's up everyone? Welcome to video number 4 in my 8-part series on how you launch a podcast. In video number 1, I talked about why you should launch a podcast. Video number 2, I talked about some of the prep work you should do before jumping in. In the last video number 3, I talked about the equipment that you need in order to launch a decent quality podcast. And in this video, I am talking about the script, the information that helps guide you through your podcast episode. Now, this information is mostly for those of you who are planning to launch a podcast where you are interviewing other people. However, even if you're not doing that, even if you're the only one talking and you're providing information, a script is still super important to help guide you through the process and give you some structure and reminders of what you're going to talk about. What I don't want you to do, whether you're interviewing someone or whether you're the only one speaking, is read off of a piece of paper word for word. In fact, I had the opportunity about 7 years ago. I was interviewed by CBC Radio and I wrote out detailed notes, a full piece of paper, and I showed up with my piece of paper to the interview, and the host took the piece of paper from me and he said, "What does this say?" And I started to explain to him some of the basics, the bullet points of what I had written down, and he said, "Cool." And he crumpled up that piece of paper and threw it away, and he said, "You don't need that." And I was so stressed out. I was shocked. I thought, how could he do that? But he was right. Because if you're sitting there reading a piece of paper word by word, your audience can tell. Even if your podcast isn't also recorded on video, even if it's only audio, people can still tell when you're reading something. For example, right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm not reading a teleprompter behind my camera or reading something like that. I am just talking. I am talking through what comes through my head. However, I have done some planning and some structure of what I want to talk to you about. And that is what a script is all about. It's those guiding ideas and thoughts that help you transition from one thing to the next. Now, when it comes to an interview script, there are a few things to keep in mind. You probably want to keep a consistent structure of how you will introduce guests, how you will end your episode. Maybe your podcast has an introduction, and I mentioned that in video number 2 on prep of how you can get an intro and an outro done through websites like Fiverr. Maybe your podcast has something along those lines, but maybe you are the one saying the first little bit. I'll give you a quick example. On the Remax Hustle podcast, this is the intro to every episode that comes after the Fiverr intro. Well, hi there and welcome to the Remax Hustle podcast. My name is Wade Patterson. I'm a franchise development consultant with Remax of Western Canada, and I'm your host for this audio experience. The Remax Hustle podcast is all about providing you with value by leveraging the knowledge and expertise of our Remax network. On this episode, we are joined by, and then I say the guest's name. Now, I have done that so many times, we're about 70 episodes in, that I don't even need a piece of paper anymore. For the first 30 episodes I would read that script word for word because I wanted to make sure that was accurate, but now it is ingrained in my head. And just like the intro, we have an outro as well, where we say that we hope that the audience got some value. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch them next time. There's always that intro and that outro that is similar because there is something nice when you're a listener to a podcast. You get excited for your favorite podcast, and when it has that familiarity at the beginning and that familiarity at the end, there's something just very enjoyable about listening to that. The second tip I have for you, if you are creating a script for an interview where you're interviewing somebody else, is to create a kick-ass bio for that person. Now, at the minimum level, and this is my biggest pet peeve, so many podcast hosts, they do their little introduction. They say, "All right, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what brought you into this space in the first place?" That is just lazy. That is lazy. Jeff shouldn't have to explain why he is there, why you have invited him to be on your podcast. You should be the one, as the host of your podcast, who does that for Jeff. Now, at the very minimum, you can go to Jeff's website or whoever you're interviewing, and you can usually find some bio information on that person. LinkedIn is another good resource. You have to do a little bit of stalking, cyber stalking, maybe check out their Facebook and get a bit of information on that person. But I like to go further than that. If the person has been interviewed before, I'll do my research. I'll watch a few interviews that person has been in, and I will take notes and I will point out different things. And in the bio, I will incorporate some of those fun facts that maybe they've told in other interviews, but I will bring those into the bio before I even say, Jeff, welcome to my podcast. I'm going to give you a quick example of this. I recently interviewed somebody on my other podcast / YouTube interview series called Show Me the Crypto. Now, this gentleman, Andrew Levine, had a really interesting background. He had so many different careers in the past before he got into blockchain technology. So watch this intro and watch his reaction to the intro. Well, hi there and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Alf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the space help bring you value. And on today's episode, we are joined by Andrew, CEO of Koinos Group. If you thought Catch Me If You Can's Frank Abagnale Jr. had an impressive resume, wait until you hear the list of professions tackled by Andrew Levine. Like Abagnale, Andrew was a lawyer, but beyond that, he also has a background in real estate. Andy was a founder and a crypto economist and a community liaison and a head of communications and advocacy, and now a CEO. In 2016, Andrew found his footing in the crypto space via the Steem blockchain, first as a content creator, then as a Steemit Inc. employee. After co-founder Ned Scott announced he had sold Steemit to Tron founder Justin Sun, Andrew resigned, but he maintains Steem is the greatest blockchain you've never heard of. Andrew, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Happy to be here and really humbled by that summary and that resume that you just gave. I'm much more impressed with myself now than I was before.
That's awesome. Well, we're really excited to have you on. And I want to go back to the beginning of this timeline of your introduction to not the crypto space, but open source software. Because my understanding is that happened when you were in law school. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm just so impressed by your research that I'm having to calibrate myself.
Take a step back in time.
Yeah. Usually I have to do all of this recapping. People are like, how did you get started? Now I don't have to do any of that. You did such a good job.
So as you can see, Andrew was blown away by that. He was so impressed because I had watched other YouTube videos and everyone had started the conversations with Andrew the same. They asked him to introduce himself. But if you are that host that introduces your guest and provides a few fun facts, they're going to be impressed right away, and that is going to help ease their comfort and make it an enjoyable interview. And if you're enjoying the interview, your audience is going to enjoy listening to that interview. So when it comes to questions for the interview, here's my other piece of advice. Prepare more than you think you'll need. I don't want you to go question 1 through 10 and stick to that script religiously and not veer away from it. No, it's a conversation and you want to be flexible enough to think of clever follow-up questions during the conversation, or maybe question number 2 was actually answered by the guest in the first question, if that makes sense. You don't want to then just ask them something that they've already told you. So you need to be actively listening while you're interviewing someone so that you know which questions to go to. But having more questions than less will give you a security blanket. I studied journalism, and I remember my very first practicum placement was at a small town newspaper, and I had the chance to interview somebody who had a career in the oil field, and I know nothing about the oil industry. And I prepared 6 questions to ask this individual. And I remember I asked question number 1, which was a yes or no question, And the interviewee said no. And then I asked question number 2, and the interviewee said sort of. And then I asked the third question, and it was another one-word answer, and pretty soon I had asked all my questions, and that was the end of the interview. And I was so embarrassed I had to go back to the newspaper, try to write up an 800-word article on the 10 answers or the 10 words that person had given me. It was impossible. I couldn't do it. And you don't want to run into that situation. If your guest is giving short, concise answers, you want to make sure and press them on those. Ask them follow-up questions, or at least have enough questions at your fingertips that you don't run out of things. Because if your show is typically an hour and then all of a sudden your episode runs up after 15 minutes, that's going to look odd when a listener is going through all the episodes. They'll think, why is this episode so much shorter than all the others? To avoid that, you want to prepare with a lot of questions, but be flexible enough to bounce around. One strategy that a lot of podcasts do is they have some fun ending. So maybe it's the same 5 questions or 3 questions that they ask every single guest. 2 examples, again, reverting to the 2 podcasts that I'm involved with. On the Remax Hustle podcast, we ask every guest what the Remax Hustle tip is. So when they need to accomplish a task, how do they get something done when they really need to accomplish that task? And that's great because now I have about 70 answers from various successful real estate agents, and we've done other kind of cool content spin-offs with that answer, but the audience always knows that I will ask that question at the end of an episode. On Show Me the Crypto, we have a couple of fun questions that we ask. We ask what the price of Bitcoin will be 10 years from now, who the person likes following in the crypto space, and what an underrated coin or project is that the audience would want to learn about. Again, this familiarity and ending an episode, maybe it's a speed round that you do or something along those lines, or maybe you roll a dice and ask them a random question. Make it fun, make it light. It's always nice to end the episode on that note and something that the audience is already aware of. So those are my tips for creating a script. I know that was focused on interviews. If you are doing a podcast or a YouTube series where you are the person talking, still have your rough bullet points. Don't read word for word everything. Maybe the intro and the outro is word for word. Everything else should just be a couple words that are reminders or cues to you of what you're going to talk about. But have that on a piece of paper so that you can reference that. Because so often when we get in front of the camera or we get in front of the microphone, we forget, we are focused on what we're doing and we don't always remember what we wanted to talk about. So by having some notes, whether you're interviewing someone or whether you're the one doing all of the talking, it's going to be so helpful. I hope this 4th video on scripts and how to write interview scripts and podcast scripts was beneficial for you. If you like what you have just seen, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. My channel is all about impactful communication. If you like this series on podcasting, hit that notification bell after you subscribe because you don't want to miss these future episodes I'm going to put out. I'm going to talk about things like syndication and all of the other things that are involved with a podcast. And leave a comment below, like this video, do it all, smash that like button. Hey, thank you for watching this. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you on the next video.